Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the John Campea podcast on this glorious Sunday. I am, of course, your host, John Campea. Big day for me, not just because we're doing the John Campea podcast, which is always a fun day for me, but also tonight, my wife Ann and I, we're going to finally go and see Hamilton. We literally bought our tickets to this like a year ago. A year ago, we bought our tickets. Tonight's the night. Anne is looking forward to this a whole lot more than I am. I'm looking forward to it a lot. I am. But she has been like a dancing little girl on Christmas morning, like all week, every day. She's been counting down the days and she's super excited. I can't wait to see it. I've heard the soundtrack a lot. I like the soundtrack a great deal. Looking forward to seeing the live show. But today we're not here to talk about, on-stage musicals. We're here to talk about movies and television, all the things in world digital entertainment that you guys want to talk about. And what I'm going to do today is I've taken 6 questions that you guys have sent into me, 6 questions and topics. How do you get a question or a topic to me? Simple. Just email me anytime at thejohncampeapodcast@gmail.com. That's thejohncampeapodcast@gmail.com. Send on in your questions. Maybe you'll see it picked out here on the show. So with all of that out of the way, let's get to question number 1. And the first question today comes to us from Jason Rye, who writes, "The thinking is that Ewan McGregor should return as Obi-Wan Kenobi in the newly announced Star Wars standalone film. If Lord Vader returns, do you think Hayden Christensen could return too?" Yeah, so for those of you who have not heard yet, if you've been living under a rock and you don't know what it is that Jason's talking about, the other day, Variety reported that Lucasfilm is developing a standalone Obi-Wan film. Now, they haven't mentioned if it's going to be a trilogy or just a single standalone. They also did not mention if Ewan McGregor would be coming back to play the role. I think that's a no-brainer. I think you I'm not going to use the word have to. You don't have to. You can use another actor if you want, and it could work out fine. But I think the smart money and common sense says you should go back to Ewan McGregor. I mean, he's the guy we all identify as Obi-Wan right now, since, Alec Guinness is not available to us to come back and play the role. So I think it would be the smart move. And I think if, all other things being equal, I do believe Lucasfilm and Disney will bring in Ewan McGregor. And I think Ewan McGregor has already made it pretty clear that he'd be open to coming back as Obi-Wan Kenobi, which would be great. So the question then becomes, it's really a 2-part question. One is, what do we think the chances are that Vader becomes a villain, or becomes the villain of this movie? And then number 2, if he does, could Hayden Christensen come back and play him? Now, Hayden showed up at Star Wars Celebration this past year, which was great. The audience loved it. It looked like he was really overwhelmed with the positive fan response that people gave him for coming back. And so it's a natural question to ask. I mean, if Vader comes back, could Hayden come back as well? Could Hayden come back to the Star Wars fold and be in a Star Wars movie again? Well, let me answer those questions the way I see them at any rate, in reverse order. Number 1, if Vader were to come into the movie and be the villain of the movie, could it be Hayden? I'd say there's a solid 80% chance. A solid 80% chance. Now, if Hayden had not shown up at Star Wars Celebration like he did, maybe that number would be a lot lower. But it seems like Star Wars was bringing him back into the fold, and he was coming back into the fold of Star Wars. The audience responded very warmly to him, which was really nice to see. Hayden's a good Canadian kid, by the way. So all that was great. So if Vader were the villain in Obi-Wan Kenobi, I think there's a very strong chance that Hayden Christensen comes back to reprise the role. However, that's kind of moot, because in order for Hayden to come back to play the role of Vader, you'd have to have Vader in the movie in the first place. And I don't think we're going to get Vader in an Obi-Wan movie. It would contradict existing movie canon. Because remember, in Star Wars Episode 4, when Obi-Wan goes onto the Death Star and Vader's like, I'm feeling a presence I haven't felt since, and it's been a long time. And then when they confront each other, Vader says, the last time we met, I was but the learner and you were the master. Now I am the master, right? So that basically clearly shows that, the battle on Mustafar that Vader and Obi-Wan had, that was the last time they saw each other. That's the last time they were anywhere near each other. So for them to have Vader come in and Vader and Obi-Wan confront each other and all this kind of stuff, it would completely contradict existing Star Wars movie canon. I don't think Pablo Hidalgo will allow that to happen. I don't think that Kathleen Kennedy will allow that to happen. And, we all love seeing Darth Vader in Star Wars Rogue One, yes, but there are other villains in this universe that you can use. It's a huge, vast universe, whether it's villains, mobster villains on Tatooine, or whether it's not Obi-Wan had to leave Tatooine, say on a mission that he thought ultimately would be to protect Luke, so he had to go off and do something else. There's lots of villains in the universe and the galaxy. So if they had Vader come back, yeah, I think there's a good chance to get Hayden. The problem is, I do not think they'll have Vader come back. It would just be too contradictory to Star Wars canon. Now, some of you might be saying, well, John, what if he's in the movie, he's just never anywhere near Obi-Wan? Then what's the point? If, the only times we see Darth Vader is he's sitting in some galactic office somewhere doing some, space HR work, what's the point then of having Vader? I mean, what's the point of having Vader in an Obi-Wan movie if you're not going to see Vader and Obi-Wan confront each other? And since we can't have Vader and Obi-Wan confront each other because that would contradict canon, it kind of seems like that goes out the window. So I just don't think we're going to see Vader in order for us to have Hayden play him. So pretty much no, I don't think it'll happen. But you never know. These studio people come up with some creative ways to usurp and contradict canon all the time. So maybe it's possible. I just don't think they'll do it. All right, thanks a lot for the question, man. And we'll move on to the next question. And the next question today comes to us from Phil Uribe, who writes, I wanted to ask if you were aware that Star Trek Discovery was coming out on Netflix outside of the US. I live in Chile. I've heard the debate on streaming services now that Disney is coming out with their own. However, it seems this only applies to the US, and Netflix will get a cut for international markets. I would appreciate your input on this. Thanks. Thanks a lot, Phil. So for those of you who don't know, there's this new television show coming out called Star Trek Discovery. And it's being made exclusively for this CBS digital streaming service called CBS All Access, which nobody cares about. I tried it. I downloaded it. It was pointless and useless, so I got rid of it. It's not going on CBS television. It's only going on CBS All Access. So, and it's going to be exclusively there. Now, what Phil is asking is that he lives in Chile and it's going to be on Netflix there. So do the streaming services and what can be on what streaming services only apply to the US? The answer is kind of complicated, but basically no. Whatever applies in the US applies worldwide. But here's the one catch, okay? CBS All Access, which is the only place that if you live in the States, you can watch Star Trek Discovery. The thing is, CBS All Access is only going to be available in the United States. So, if CBS wants people outside of the US to watch Star Trek Discovery, but they don't have CBS All Access available to any other country, how does CBS then get other people around the world to watch it? Well, they have to sign a distribution deal to allow other companies who do serve international markets the right to carry the show. CBS wants to make money on this Star Trek Discovery show outside of the US, but since they don't have CBS All Access outside of the US, they have to let other people carry it so they can still generate and make money. In this case, in a lot of international markets, they've gone with Netflix. I believe there are a couple of markets where they've gone with some other streaming services, but yes, in this particular case, Netflix is allowed to carry it internationally, not because they just get to carry whatever they want outside of the US. No. CBS allows them to carry it outside of the US because CBS All Access is only available in the US. And so for them to put their show in front of international audiences, they have to let other digital distributors carry it for international markets. That's the specific answer for here. Once, something like Disney's new digital streaming service gets launched, I believe it's 2019, they said they're going to launch that. I believe that'll probably be a worldwide thing. Disney is a company with worldwide reach. So that will probably be its own international thing. It won't have anything to do with anything else. But in this particular situation with Star Trek Discovery, the only reason Netflix is allowed to carry it outside of the US is because the exclusive rights holder, CBS All Access, is only available in the US, and they still want their show to be seen by the international market, so they let other people carry it. So anyway, I hope that clears that up. I hope that makes that a little more clear for you. Thanks a lot for the question, Phil. All right, we move on now to the next question. And the next question today comes to us from Mr. Yazman 3000, or 300, I should say, who writes, I'm a big Uncharted fan, and I don't want the movie to get made. I have several reasons why I don't want it to be made. Number one, Shawn Levy. The current director is a better producer than a director, and I don't think he'll do the movie and game justice. 2. The casting of Tom Holland and the vision of the movie being a prequel and an origin story. I like Holland, but the majority of the fans don't want to see a baby Nathan Drake movie, especially an origin story. I find it to be disrespectful, and his casting is a cash grab on his success as Spider-Man. Well, thanks a lot for the question, Mr. Yasmin. Well, I mean, first of all, for those of you who don't know, Uncharted is a very popular video game series. It's got some great narrative in it, and this really iconic character, Nathan Drake, that's in there. And they've announced that they are trying to develop a movie for it, and they're going to have a movie for this come out. And they've been working on it for a long time, trying to get this up and running. Whether or not it ever actually happens, we'll have to wait and see, but it looks like they're making good progress. So let's start with your question about Shawn Levy. I think Shawn Levy has shown himself he can be a very good director. He's directed a couple of very good comedies. He's directed a couple of very cheesy comedies, but that's kind of what they were going for. But if you ever doubt that Shawn Levy can direct really interesting narrative in kind of a sci-fi environment and fantasy environment and bring real heart and depth to their characters, just watch the movie he did with Hugh Jackman called Real Steel. I mean, seriously. If you have any doubts that Shawn Levy can direct films and tell stories on that level, watch Real Steel. A movie that on its surface, it's rockin' sock'em robots. I mean, it's a good movie's gonna be silly. And it's not. It's got great depth of character. It's got huge amounts of heart to it. Like just an unbelievable amount of heart. Great inter-character dynamics. I mean, I thought he showed a dimension and a level to his storytelling ability that we didn't realize he had at the time. I would not worry about the fact that Shawn Levy would be directing. If Shawn Levy ends up directing it, I wouldn't worry about that whatsoever. Now, as far as the notion of, people don't want an origin story or a prequel. Well, it's not a prequel because, remember, this isn't the video game. This is the movie. This is not the video game. It's based on the video game, but it's not the video game. It's the movie. So it's not a prequel. This is part 1 of the movie story of Uncharted. So it's not a prequel. But, you do mention that there's a bunch of fans that are concerned about it being an origin story, and they don't really want to see an origin story. Well, tough. I mean, it sounds weird to say that, but guess what? The people who played the game are not the majority of the audience that are going to be going to see this movie. At least the studio hopes they're not the majority of people going to see this movie. They want to build a movie universe. I'm going to tell you right now, the studio's not interested right now in just making one big movie. They smell franchise. They want 5 big money-making movies, okay? And the best place to start is an origin story. If you are hoping to develop a franchise of films, best places to start is an origin story. Unless you're like Spider-Man, where you've already had 2 different movie versions of an origin story already. There has been no movie version of an origin story for Uncharted and Nathan Drake. So that's probably what they're thinking. They're thinking it's got to be an origin story. We're going to start it at a certain age so we can develop and grow a franchise and have the audience grow along with our character. So I'm totally fine with that. I think that's cool too. As far as Tom Holland goes, look, something we need to wrap our heads around here. If you're concerned about Tom Holland because he seems too young, guess what? It's because that's what the script is calling for. So if they don't use Tom Holland, they're just going to go out and get another kid that's the same age or younger. So, I mean, that's it. It's what the script is calling for. So it's not that, let's do a young Nathan Drake because we're going to have Tom Holland. No. They had their idea for the movie and it calls for a young Nathan Drake. So they went and got Tom Holland. And Tom Holland isn't 15 anymore. I mean, let's be serious. And Tom Holland is an exceptional actor. Forget just Spider-Man. Look at his other films. And I mean, he doesn't have a huge laundry list of movies, but he's been in a couple of good films that he's been very, very good in. He is an exceptional actor for his age, a really exceptional actor for his age. And so I think an Uncharted movie could do much worse than getting in a Tom Holland, an actor of that caliber to come in and be your Nathan Drake. Now, as far as your statement goes, I think it's just a cash grab because of his success as Spider-Man. Hey, dude, I got a news flash for you. Everything about this movie is a cash grab. The very fact that they're making this movie is a cash grab. The very fact that they make any movie is a cash grab. And anybody who tells you otherwise is either delusional or lying. The movie business is a business. Yes, it's art, but it's the business of art, okay? And nobody puts up $50 million to make a movie. Nobody puts up $100 million to make a movie. Nobody puts up $200 million to make a movie just for the sake of making a movie. The financiers are putting up that money because they expect a return on their investment. People do this so they can be employed and make a living and earn money. Everything about this movie is a cash grab. The very fact that they went out and got a video game title is a cash grab. All right? Everything about this movie is a cash grab. And that's okay. That's okay. Because if they believe that getting Tom Holland will make more people interested in seeing the movie, and Tom Holland is a good actor, so they believe that Tom Holland will make the movie even better, so we can make a part 2 and a part 3 and a part 4 and a part 5, then there's nothing wrong with that at all. Again, I quote the infamous Gordon Gekko from Wall Street: greed is good. Greed works when it comes to the movie studio industry. Greed is good. Greed works. Greed helps and serves the audience. Because if they want a hit series, if they don't just want one movie that makes a little bit of money, they want 5 movies that makes them buttloads of money. If that's the case, then greed will motivate them to want to make that first movie as good as possible. Doesn't mean they'll automatically succeed. Not at all. Everybody tries. But the fact that they want 5 big major films or 6 big major films to make them ungodly asses amounts of money, then that motivates them to make sure that that first movie is as good as it can be and that people will love it. And if, in their opinion, the best way to do that is to get a super talented and high-profile current young actor like Tom Holland, then that's what they should do. That's what they should do. So look, because they want this movie to not only be one successful movie, they want it to be 6 or 7 successful movies. They're not just getting Tom Holland as a cash grab because he's popular for Spider-Man. Because if that was the case and they didn't think he was the right guy and they didn't think he was talented enough to do it, then they would be undermining their future success. Again, greed makes them not interested in making just a little bit of money off one film. Greed makes them interested in making ass loads of money on 7, 8, 9, 10, 25 films. And to do that, they know they've got to do the first one right. And I got to tell you, man, I'm going to disagree with you on this. Getting Tom Holland. Now, was I originally on board with the idea of a young Nathan Drake movie? No, I wanted them to start off with an older one. But okay, they've got a vision where they start with a younger one. Okay, fine. If that's the case, then getting an actor like Tom Holland is a no-brainer. That's a home run. And having a director like Shawn Levy, honestly, if you haven't watched Real Steel, watch it. And I believe any fears you have about what he can bring to the table in a movie like this, I think it'll alleviate a lot of your stress over this situation. So anyway, that's just my opinion on this. That's just my point of view on this. You clearly have another point of view, which is totally fine. But yeah, I'm going to disagree with you, man, on this issue. I'm going to disagree. I think greed will motivate the studio to do the best job that they can. I think getting an actor of the caliber of Tom Holland is doing that. I think getting a director like Shawn Levy can work. There are certainly much worse directors they could get for it. It's really all going to come down to the script and where they go from there. And I think they'll do just fine. All right. Thanks a lot for the question, man. We move on now to the next question. And the next question today comes to us from Lathan Singleon, who writes, "Hey, John, thank you for all you give us. I'm hospitalized a lot, and all I watch is ESPN and You." Well, thanks a lot, Lathan. I hope you get better soon and get out of there. All right. It looks like in Star Wars Episode 8, we're getting an expansion on Jedi lore in history. It does look like that. Will we be getting a similar expansion on Darkside / Sith history? Could Snoke be the door used to do so? Yeah, so we already know from the first trailer we saw from Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi, that we see some of the ancient books of the Jedi. I think we're going to get more into the lore of the Jedi. I think we're going to find out a lot of what Luke has been spending his time finding out over the past 30 years. And the information he's been gathering and what he's gleaned either from the books and the libraries he's come across, the artifacts he's collected, or from sitting down and having chats with his good Force Ghost friends, Luke and Obi-Wan. Who knows? We'll have to see. So the question, though, is, will we get a similar expansion on Sith? I think so, only because Sith and Jedi are two sides of the same coin. To better understand and to deepen your knowledge of Jedi is to deepen your knowledge of Sith as well. Because the two are the yin and the yang of each other in many ways. So I think we will. Now, will Snoke be the mechanism for learning more about the Sith? I don't know, because as of right now, I still don't have a lot of insight as to, or theories about, what's the deal with Snoke? I mean, is he Sith or is he something completely different? We just don't know. If he's something completely different, I don't know that we'll go a lot into Sith lore. If he is Sith or formerly Sith, then maybe we will. So will we get more stuff on the history of the Sith? Yes, I think so. But then what will be the vehicle that we'll find it out? Will we find it out through Luke and his research and his history? Or will we, as you were asking in your question, find out through Snoke as the vehicle of the information because of his history with Sith? I just don't know. A lot of that will depend on how they decide to explain Snoke and what Snoke is exactly and what his role is in all of this. And until we know that, it's hard to say. I would right now put my money on, and I'm just guessing, on Luke being the vehicle of us finding out more about the Sith as opposed to Snoke. I think they're going to keep Snoke pretty mysterious. I have a feeling they're not going to let us know a whole lot about Snoke. I don't think we're going to get every last detail, what he had for breakfast when he was 7 years old. I don't think we're going to find all that stuff out, and we don't need to find all that stuff out. Just like until the prequels, we really didn't know much about the Emperor, except for the fact that he was the Emperor. That's all we knew. Emperor got some wrinkly-ass skin on his face, and he's bad. That's all we really knew. And I think Snoke might end up being the same thing here, but you never know. We'll have to wait and see. All right, thanks a lot again for the question, Lathan, and get well soon, man. All right, next question today comes to us from Alex Scaff, who writes, "Hey, John, my question is in regards to your statement of Warner Brothers and the Justice League release date. I know you said that the studio will move the date if they want to further the quality of the movie, yet if they do push it back, when do you believe it could release? Surely they'd stick to the end of November, right? With Star Wars in December, I'd imagine Warner Brothers would like to stay as far away as possible to give Justice League the space it needs to gather up as much money as possible." Well, thanks a lot for the question, Alex. For those of you who don't know what he's talking about, on the John Campea podcast a few days ago, we did address the question with the Justice League reshoots and pickup shots and additional scenes that they've been shooting being much more extensive and longer lasting than they thought, because they've been going on these reshoots for a long time and they're still going on right now. Can they still make the November release date? I think they still can. But here is my point of view on it. My point of view, what he's referring to is that I made a statement that said, look, I believe Warner Brothers is proving to the audience that they are 100% committed to making this Justice League movie the absolute best it can be. And that I believe, since they've already been doing lots of things to demonstrate that they're committed to the quality of the movie, that if moving the release date is necessary to increase the quality of the movie, I believe Warner Brothers will move the release date. So that's what I said on the show previously. Now, what Alex seems to be asking here is that, well, if they move it, they'll still keep it in November, right? No, if they move it, they're not just going to move it by a week or two. If they move it, because if the difference is only a week or two, then they'll just stick with the original release date. That's fine. If they need more time, I believe they'll move it by a couple of months. I don't think they'll release it in December. They do not want to go head-to-head with Star Wars Episode 8. That would be tragic for everybody involved. So there's no way they're going to do that. They're far too smart for that. I think if they move it, and I'm still not saying that they will. I still say the smart money's on they release it in November, but it is possible they move it. But if they move it, I think it would be genius for them to move it to February, early February. Now, some of you might be thinking, but John, February is when they release a lot of bad movies. Exactly. I have been saying for a long time that I believe there is an opportunity in these graveyard months of releasing movies. I believe there's an opportunity for a high-quality, high-profile, big-budget blockbuster film to release and eat up all the box office and just make a killing. It would be a bit of a risk, yes, but I believe there's an opportunity there. So I would think that if Warner Brothers decides, hey, we've still got some good ideas with Justice League, we need a couple of extra months to shoot them and make it the movie we want it to be, to give our audience the best movie that they deserve. If that's the case, then I believe a late January, early February would be a prime opportunity to release a film like that. Now, there are still some decent films coming out in those windows, so you want to make sure you space at least 2 weeks in between them. But I believe there's an opportunity there, and I believe that they'll do it. But again, they might be on pace. Even though these reshoots are being extensive, I'm sure they probably planned in advance they bought themselves some margin. that here, let's just schedule some extra time for ourselves between our release date in November and when we thought we would be done shooting. And let's leave some extra time in there just in case we need it. So that's called a contingency plan. I'm sure Warner Brothers they're very experienced, they're very smart. I'm sure they had a contingency plan and they budgeted some extra time for themselves. So I still think they can get this done. And if they decide that they can't, I think January, February, but they will not move the date a couple of weeks. They will not move the date from one date in November to another date in November. That I don't see happening, but I do agree with you. I do not think we'll see them move it to December. That I do not think they'll do. A month or two later, late January, early February, prime real estate right there. I think Justice League would make a killing in that window. Anyway, guys, we move on to the final question of the day. And the final question today comes to us from Sebastian Balisson, who writes, now that we have a DCEU Nightwing film in development, and we know that Jason Todd exists or existed in this universe after seeing his Robin costume in Batman vs. Superman, do you think that Batman needs a new Robin? And if so, who should it be? I've seen many people suggest Damian Wayne, but I would personally like to see Tim Drake alongside Ben Affleck's Batman. Well, let's start with the first thing here. We don't know that Jason Todd existed in the DCEU. We don't know that. All we know is that at some point, Batman had a partner, and it was clearly a grown man. When you look at the size of that costume, that was a grown man's costume, all right? At some point in his history, Batman had a Robin partner, all right? Sidekick, partner, whatever their relationship was. So we know that. We have no notion that that was Jason Todd. Now, some of you might be screaming, but John, in the comic books, Jason Todd is the one that the Joker killed. Yeah. This ain't the comic book. This is the movies. And the movies, as we've seen, do not necessarily need to stick to particular plot points or details that were in existence in the movies or that in the comic books. Like, let's say, do you think that this Joker, played by Jared Leto, lured that Jason Todd out with his mother and then first clubbed him to within an inch of his life with a crowbar and then blew him up in a building with explosives? Do you think that's exactly the way it happened? Probably not. So look, is it possible it's Jason Todd? Absolutely. I would even put money on the fact that it was a Jason Todd. But we don't know. Let's be careful saying, hey, we know Jason Todd existed. No, we don't. We don't know it was Jason Todd because they haven't said so in the movies. Some filmmakers might have said, oh, in our mind, it's Jason Todd. But forget that. Until it's said in the movie, we don't know. For all we know, his Robin was some guy named Ralph Schnickelplix. And Ralph Schnickelplix was his Robin. For all we know. I mean, we just don't know at this point. But let's move on to the other part of the question here. Does Batman need a new Robin? No. No, he doesn't. Batman does not need a Robin. Not in this movie universe, not this movie cinematic Batman. He does not need a Robin. Robin is great in the animated show. Robin is great in the comic books. And they sometimes they describe it in the comic books that Batman kind of needs a Robin figure to kind of anchor Batman's humanity. I get that. But this is, DC movies have been described as more gritty, grounded, and realistic. And in a more gritty, grounded, and realistic story, this Batman that we've been introduced to, this Ben Affleck Batman that we have met, he does not bring along children to gunfights with mobsters. He doesn't bring children along to gunfights with mobsters. This Batman doesn't do that. No way. And I think it's only reinforced by the fact that we've seen a Robin costume, and that Robin costume was clearly the costume of a full-ass grown man. Okay, so what if, though? What if they still introduce a Robin character, but he's like 21, 23 years old, an adult, more physically capable, more mature, legally allowed to make his own decisions, as an adult? I'd be fine with that. I would be fine with that. Because I do see that this Batman would work with other people. I just don't because I believe the original, correct me if I'm wrong, for not New 52, not Rebirth, but I believe the original Tim Drake, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe he was introduced in 1989. I think Tim Drake was 13 years old. Now, I believe in New 52 and stuff like that, they retconned that and they said Tim Drake, when he became Robin, he was 17 or 18. So they retconned that. But I believe the original Tim Drake, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, I could be wrong about this. I believe the original Tim Drake was 13 years old when he brought it. Do I see, or Damian Wayne was 9 or 10 or whatever. I mean, do I see this Ben Affleck Batman bringing a 14-year-old child? into battle with mobsters with automatic weapons, no, that would make Batman a child abuser. By legal definition, that makes Batman a child abuser, bringing a child into a situation like that. It also makes him an asshole. And Batman is a little bit of an asshole, and that's fine too, but he's not a recklessly evil, child-endangering asshole. That is not what Batman is. Not this one in the movies, at any rate. So could they do it? Okay, number one, you asked the question, do I think Batman needs a Robin? No, I do not believe the cinematic Batman needs a Robin. If they did do a Robin, is there a way they could do it? Yeah, there's a way you could do it, but you got to make him older. Make him at least in his 20s. And if you do that, then I get over my issue, and I think other people who think the way I do, that handles and takes care of the issues that I have about Batman bringing along children. If you don't have Batman bringing along a child and you've got an adult as a Robin, yeah, I'm fine with that. I still wouldn't choose for them to do that. I would still prefer them not to do that. But if they did it and did it right, dude in his 20s and whatever, you won't get any complaints out of me. I'm fine with that. Anyway, that'll do it for me, guys, for this Sunday edition of the John Campea podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. Hey, listen, guys, if you're one of the people who enjoys my 70s to 90s videos that I make every single month, consider becoming one of my Patreon supporters. A whole bunch of you guys already support me. Thank you so much. Look in the description of this video and you'll find a link for more information. Also, while you're here, take a second, click on the subscribe button, become a subscriber to my YouTube channel. Make sure you're following me on Facebook and on Twitter. Just follow me all the time. I make lots of announcements and update you on everything that's going on here at the channel on my social media. Just follow me at John Campea. That'll do it for me for right now, guys. Thanks a lot for joining me, and until next time, bye-bye.